Hi and welcome to this hardware guide of the Reloop Ready controller. The first thing we want to do with this controller is to get it set up, and there's two ways we can do this. On the left hand side of the controller you can see we've got a PC power port. This is a USB type B and also an iOS USB type A. If you want to use this with an iPad, flick the switch to iOS, connect your iPad into this port here. iPhones will also work, and then connect the USB port to a power source to power the controller. This will also power your phone and iPad from this port. To use it with a computer, switch the side to PC, ignore the iOS port, and simply connect this USB port to the computer. On the other side of the controller, we can connect our headphones and our speakers. Speakers are handled by an RCA line level output with the white and red accordingly, and headphones are connected via a 1/8 inch smaller connection. So if you're using a headphone with a big adapter like this, make sure you remove the adapter before connecting the headphones. The controls for the headphones and for the speakers can be found here. So on the left hand side we have the volume of the headphones. We have the Q mix to blend between our Q track and what the master speaker is playing on the right hand side. This has a central notch in the middle so you can quite easily recenter it. And then on the far right we have the speaker volume. This is the master output, so how loud the controller will play to your speakers. So first of all, let's take a look at the Reloop Ready when used with Serato DJ Lite, which comes as a free download, and this controller will then unlock that software to be used. Once you've connected the controller, you will be greeted with this screen here. We can use the central dial here in the controller to browse through our songs. You can flick between your playlist area on the left hand side, and then when you press in on the rotary encoder you will go into the playlist area, and when you find a track you want to load you can use either the load button on the left or the load button on the right accordingly. To head back out of an area you can also press shift and press in on the control here to go back an area. Once a track has been loaded we can listen to it through the speakers that are connected on the controller itself, or we can actually use the speakers inside the laptop as well. To access the speakers inside the laptop, head up to the settings icon in Serato, head to audio and click use laptop speakers. Then with your laptop unmuted you can now hear the track playing from the laptop as well as the speakers going out. This is a great tip to know in case you're playing without your speakers, maybe you're on the road and want to prepare some music on the go. Moving on to the controller itself and getting a track playing. Down at the bottom we have our transport controls. Most importantly, on the right hand side we have the Q button. This will set a temporary cue point. When the track is paused we can move this cue point. So at the moment the track isn't playing, so I can move the jog wheel and replace this Q button anywhere I like. When a track is playing, so if I press the play button here on the right hand side, the Q button will stop the track and move me back to the point where that cue point was placed. Just like that. In Serato DJ Lite, the bottom 4 pads aren't in use. So at all times, these will have the same features. The flashing pad on the far right hand side will play from the cue point, and when you press it again, we'll just jump you back to the cue point and keep playing. The Q button to the right hand side of the middle is a fast forward, so you can press it and hold it and you will fast forward through a track. The pad to the left is the reverse button. And the button on the far left hand side, the far left pad, will flip the reverse of play, so you will start playing in reverse. The top 4 pads are the performance pads for the mode you're in. You can change the mode by pressing down on the mode button, and you can see this left hand pad has lit up here, which means we're in the hotkey mode. So with hotkeys I can set up to 4 hotkeys during the track and jump around the track using these hotkeys. So if I place one there, one there, one there, and one there. To remove a hotkey, press shift and simply press on the pad you want to delete. Moving on to the second pad mode, hold down the pad mode again and press the second pad mode. This turns the top 4 pads into auto loops. So when I press on a pad, it will start a loop on beat. So if I press play, so I've got an 8-beat loop. If I press the one further in, that's a 4-beat loop, a 2-beat loop, and a 1-beat loop. Pressing the pad again will exit that loop. The next pad mode we have along is the manual loop mode. This is for manually setting a loop so you can purposely be off beat if you like. It works quite simply. You have 2 buttons that are lit up. The one on the left is the in point and the one on the right is the out point. When you are in a loop, the third pad on the right hand side will show up and that's your exit button. So let's show you how that works in practice. So in, out. We can then press the in and out button again to move these points if we wish with the jog wheel. So if I press the in button, you can see now I can use the jog wheel to move where the in point starts. Pressing it again will set it at its new position. I can move the out point again if I wish. And then I can press the far right hand pad to exit that loop. Pressing that pad again will reactivate the loop, as you can see. So if you want that loop to constantly be active, maybe you're jumping ahead of that loop, you can activate it again using that feature. But if you have left the loop, it will not jump you back into it. Finally, the final pad mode is the sampler. You can see the sampler by opening up this panel here in Serato DJ Lite. And you can see we've got an air horn, a siren, a sub drop, and a sweep up. Pressing the pad will, of course, trigger that sample. Moving away from the performance pads, we do have a sync button down on either side of the deck. So if we don't want to manually change the BPM of the track and we just want it to sync up instantly, we can use the sync feature. It's quite easy. So if I get a track playing over here, this track is playing at 130 BPM, as you can see up here. This track's at 128. If I press sync and then press play, so it will not only get the BPMs to the right value, but if you trigger it whilst the track is playing, it will also jump the track perfectly in time on the beat grid. To turn sync off, make sure you press shift and just press sync on either deck. To change the BPM manually on a track, you can use these large tempo faders found on either side of the deck. These are really large and allow you to move across a wide variety of BPMs. They're very smooth and accurate. I really do like these. To the right of these tempo faders, we do of course have the jog wheels. The jog wheels speed up the track or slow it down. So if I spin this to the right on the outside edge, it speeds it up. I can slow the track down. If I touch on top of the deck, it will stop that deck and perform a scratch action. To turn this feature off, in case you want to use the top of the jog wheel to scrub through a track, you can press this vinyl button here. When that's unlit, you can touch the top and speed up and slow down that way around. Simply pressing it again will reactivate this feature. On the Serato DJ Lite software, there is a key lock feature. This keeps the track playing in the same key and the same pitch when you speed it up and slow it down. If you want to turn this feature off, you can do by pressing this key lock button here. So with key lock on, when I speed the track up or slow it down, it sounds the same. If I turn this off, finally, up at the top we have our effects sections. Now we can view the effects and change them within the software by opening the effects panel up here. And we can change between a few different effects. Now to get the effect active, you simply press on the button up here. So that will activate the effect 1, effect 2 and effect 3. And of course we can have all 3 effects happening at once if we like. Or we can quite simply just have one. And then to change how effective the effect is, how much of that effect is coming through, we have this dial in the top left hand corner, so we can dial in the wet dry value. We can also change the beat division on the controller itself by pressing the shift and turning the loop encoder. This will change us up from half to 1 to 2 to 4 and all the way up to 8 beats for the length of each effect. Of course, all three effects are controlled and timed by the same beat division. So if you want an 8-beat flanger, you'll have to do it on an opposite side to, say, a 1-beat echo. Up here, this dial that we just used to change the beat division on the effects, this is actually a loop encoder when you're not pressing the shift button in. So what you can do is you can change the loop value, and you can see here on the screen that the auto loop value is changing by turning this. And then, quite simply, pushing the loop encoder in will activate that loop. You can use the loop encoder to half or double a length of value whilst the loop is active. So if I turn this, pushing the loop encoder again will exit that loop. Down below we have the parameter buttons. This is where we can change the parameters of a given effect or a given mode that we're in. On Serato DJ Lite you can move a loop, so if we have a loop activated, we can use this to move the loop across. And it's a really easy way of being able to move a loop in case you've got it wrong. This button does have a lot more functionality in Serato DJ Pro. Moving on to the mixer section of the controller, we have a 2-band EQ on this controller with a dedicated gain. So at the top here on either side, we do have a gain for that track. This is not a volume control. This is the level that you are outputting. Please do not use it as a volume control. That's what these faders are for. This is to set the overall gain of a track. And what I mean by that is you set the highest volume peak of the track with this dial here to not be any louder than it should be, not put any additional voltage into the speakers. And this is how we control the overall volume of a track. So as default, you really want it about 12 o'clock, and the software will automatically try and control the gain of a track when it analyzes it. Should it get it wrong, then you can use the gain controls to just fine tune that. But majority of the time, we're going to leave this at the 12 o'clock position. Below the gain control, we do have a high and a low EQ. Turning down the high, we'll turn down the treble. We can also boost it by turning it to the right. And below, we have the bass, so we can cut off all the bass frequencies by turning to the left, or add some more bass in by turning it to the right. Because this is a 2-band EQ and not a 3-band EQ as we typically have on a DJ controller, when you turn down the bass and the treble, you will be left with the mid frequencies still coming out of this controller. Just like that. Below the EQ, we have the high pass, low pass filter. Turn it to the right, we'll activate a high pass filter with a bit of resonance on there. And then turn it to the left, we'll activate a low pass filter. Finally, next to these filters, we have the Q buttons. When you press a Q button and it's lit up, that side of the deck will then come out of your headphones when the Q mix is set to the middle or to the left hand position here. The Q mix will allow you to listen to that track, get it in time, and you'll be able to hear everything that's going on with that deck before this volume fader is even touched. So we can have that turned down so the crowd can't hear us, but you'll be able to hear what's going on in your headphones. And we have one of these for each side of the deck. Do note you can have both active at one time. Some DJs prefer to mix in this way. If you do want to hear what the crowd are hearing out of the speakers, simply turn the Q mix dial all the way to the right hand side. Let's move on to Serato DJ Pro now, where we can get access to more professional features with this controller. So here we are in Serato DJ Pro, and the first thing you need to know is that unlike Serato DJ Lite, in Serato DJ Pro we do have access to all 8 performance pads on the controller. So each mode now will contain all 8 pad modes, so the bottom row will no longer do the Q, the fast forward, or the reverse play functionality. So as you can see on this left hand deck, I do have a track with 8 hot cues set. So these all light up in different colors. We can change the color of the pads by right clicking here and just simply selecting a new color, and this will change the color of the pad just like that. Obviously, again, just like on Serato DJ Lite, if we press shift, we can delete a lot of hotkeys out should we wish. Right, the rest of the controller really does operate in the exact same way, apart from some key functionalities. And these are actually handily labeled on the controller itself for us. So the top 4 pad modes are all the exact same as Serato DJ Lite. However, the bottom 4 pads now, we have additional features. So the first one on the bottom left is pitch and time. Now, pitch and time, pitch play, does require the pitch and time expansion pack for Serato DJ Pro. So if you do not have this expansion pack, this mode will not activate, sadly. But if you do, you access it just like this. And what this mode will do is it will play from the hot cue that you select. So we've got hot cue 1 set at the moment. And then as I move around the pads, it will pitch up or pitch down the track. And then we can use the parameter buttons here to move the key that we're actually in. So pitch play is a really creative tool, and it's essential for DJs that want to do a bit of a tone play routine. We do have a full tone play course, so make sure you check that out on our website if you want to learn more about this functionality. Moving on the right hand side, we have the scratch bank feature. Now this is a feature reserved for the top end scratch mixers. So to see this on such a small controller as this is really impressive. You can load up the scratch bank feature by clicking on this area here, and you can see at the moment we don't have any scratch samples loaded into this deck. You can load any track in. It doesn't just have to be a scratch sample. You can load in tracks just like this, and then with the scratch bank you can tell that track to play when you press that pad. So it will take over from the track that's currently playing, instantly load a track in, and it will play it from the point you want it to play at. So on this down arrow here, you can see that we've got it at start. This will also be start because we don't have a hot cue set on this track. But if I go and load this track in, and I'll just quickly set some hot cues. So I've got hot cue 1 there, and let's put one on that drop there. Now, when I've got this track in my scratch bank, I can select if I want it to start from the drop, like I have done here. So if we have another track playing, I'll show you how that scratch bank feature works. We get a track playing. When I press that second pad, it's going to play the ghost track that we just loaded in, and it's going to play it from that second hot cue point. And in the same way, I can load that first track up instantly. So Scratch Bank is a really creative feature, and it's amazing to see it on a controller that costs as little as this one does. Next up, we've got Loop Roll. Loop rolls are really fun and really cool to get involved with. So it's when you press on the pad, it will keep the roll activated, the loop, and then as soon as you let go, it will just jump out of it. Now, loop roll, you can change the parameter of the loop roll size. So at the moment, as you can see, this only works on the top 4 pads, by the way. The bottom 4 pads actually activate the beat jump feature in Serato DJ Pro. So the top 4 pads at the moment will activate a 16, an 8, a 4, and a 2. So for a roll, that's not very useful to us. So there's 2 ways of moving this. We can either press shift and press the parameter buttons to move this down and up, as you can see here on the right hand side. Alternatively, we can use the loop encoder on the top right hand side, so we can move this up and down. So I'd normally recommend that you have it so the 1 beat value is on the far right, and then you can just So loop rolls are really cool. As I mentioned, the beat jump controls are shown on the bottom. You can change this in the settings if you don't want the beat jump controls to be here, but I actually quite like it. The middle 2 pads will move the division of the beat jump, as you can see on the bottom here. So if I want to jump 8 beats, I can just select 8 beats by going right to double it, or left to half, go to 8 beats, jump forward with the right pad, jump back with the left pad. So that's the loop roll section. And finally, on the right hand side, we have the beat grid edit mode. So we can use the pads to edit the beat grid. Editing the beat grid is best done when the track isn't playing. And also you can edit the beat grid by clicking up here in the right hand corner, and you can see the beat grid controls. So you can see what's happening. So on the bottom row, we've got the slip functions there. And then on the top, we've got the adjust functions there as well. Of course, you don't have to save this if you don't like. You can always press the cancel button down here. But that's the beat grid control on there as well. Moving away from the performance pads, there are some other features that are labeled on the controller. Like I say, everything that's additional in Serato DJ Pro is labeled on the controller, which is really, really cool to see. So we can see underneath the vinyl button, if we press shift, by pressing this, we activate slip. Slip will allow us to make a lot of changes on the deck without the playhead ever leaving where it would normally be. So if I press play on this track, if I spin the jog wheel back, as soon as I let go, it'll jump back to where the track would have been. In the same way, hotkeys do the same thing. So it allows you to make changes to the track, and the track will always jump back to where it would have been if you'd not made those changes with the slip mode active. Press shift and press that again to turn it off. On the right hand side, on the key lock button, if we press shift with the key lock button, it will key sync. Again, this does require the pitch and time expansion pack, but what will happen is you can see over here, this track is in the key of 6A. I'll get that track playing. This track's in the key of 9A. If we get this track playing and then press shift, press the key lock, and it's jumped it to 7A, because that is actually a harmonic key with the 6A, so these tracks will now harmonically mix and sound the best they can do. But there we go, there's a full walkthrough of everything the Reloop Ready is capable of.